left behind. But all my time in the US, I was at school. I haven't never get the opportunity to support them.
I'm sorry.
Because of what was happening on this throughout the country after Kenny's school was attacked, some people chose to leave the school and go home. Kenny had to make the very difficult choice in order to survive to leave directly from school. So he was not able to go back home, and he fled directly to Congo.
Because if I went home, I could be dead.
Yes.
Kenny, we've talked about tribalism in America, but tribalism in Africa may mean something very different. What did tribalism mean to you as a human being in Africa? And were you a Tutsi or Hutu? Or explain that if you would, please.
Usually, because I felt like God gave me an opportunity to be part of those two tribals. I'm not Hutu, I'm not Tutsi. I'm in the middle. Because my mom was a Hutu and my dad was Tutsi. But based to the tribal, they call me Tutsi because my dad is a Tutsi. They don't take the tribal of the woman in Africa. We are the patriarchal rather than matriarchal. So the tribal, to me, I spend much time researching what is that. As a person who speaks 10 languages, I explore different language. I bought a book of anatomy of language. I was trying to learn one by one. I tried to understand when I was doing my bachelor's at Loyola, I spent much time in the library trying to figure out why I'm here. I left my parent when I was 20 years. I was starting to see the entire promises to see that I can give back to my parent, especially my mom who used to bring me some peanut at school, but I didn't give her anything. I end up to figure out that the tribalism was brought by colonies. They were a major nose. If you have a short nose like this, they consider as a Hutu because it's so small. They just measure like this. And then when it's tall, they call you Tutsi. Those indicators doesn't have any biological relationship. No any gene you can just trace and see, oh, I can find this. I end up to figure out there were a miscommunication. The Burundian was talking about their own language. The Germany or Belgium, they don't speak the language, but they know how to take a note. Anyone who went to university, higher level, you don't, when you are in the, like in doctorate level, what I saw, because I have some classes in doctorate level, you just abbreviate because you don't have time to take the entire sentences because the professor is just fast. He knows you understand. They were taking just note. Those note was wrong. Either they were insulting them or they were not telling the truth. And then they take note because they have a power to implement it, they implement it and it becomes a law. That's how tribalism comes from. But it's not true.
Thank you.
And I think
Thank you.
what Kenny has lived so, in such dramatic fashion is it's the same instinct. We just see it at different levels, right? And we see it at different levels of action. But that tribalism is it's the same thing, right? It's identifying, in many cases, identifying about things that aren't really that relevant at all. Do we have another question? Hi.
There was a very famous movie called Hotel Rwanda, where the same tribes were at war, and a Belgian innkeeper who came to speak at St. Sabina to Father Flager's church with Ebert and Siskel and Senator Durbin in the front row and said, "Don't ever let this happen again." Yet in your generation, it was still going on. Can you comment on that? How long this is this an ancient tribal issue? Or is this something since colonialism divided people and divided the geography where tribes were then put together that didn't belong together?
This is so interesting question because as I said, I spend much time to understand. Usually the Central East Africa, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Congo, they are not living on their own. They're living to Belgium, and especially Belgium legacy, because they lived together for 35 years when the German was colonized the Rwanda, Burundi, and the Congo, because that was only one country. And then when Truman make 13 points, and they never invite the Germany to be participating in those kind of 13 points, they take all the colonies which was belong to Germany and they give it to Belgium as help because Germany was fighting for France. And then when France was fighting, everything, they destroy everything from Belgium, but France was intact. Since in age time, they were a major, the richness of a country by colonies. So they take out the colony which was belong to Belgium. Belgium has a post-trauma stress. They want to build their own country. If you want to build, they use the word in France. In French, they say divide to conquer. Il faut diviser pour mieux régner. That means you have to divide and conquer. So that's only one model they use to divide those people. But in general, they were brother and sister.
What else? We have.
Thank you.
Hi, Kenny. I'm Ben.
Thank you.
Can you talk about how your life experience has either strengthened or made you question a higher power or God or spiritual stuff? Or do you think about that at all?
I think you can call me a palliative, a positive person. If I can sit with you, you have a very bad day, I will change to be good day. The reason I will change, I have already found in life, there is nothing better than to be positive. Even the science said, if you are thinking positively, you create new neurons. And those old neurons, they're gonna prone. That's where the word comes elasticity in neuroscience comes from. Because before they were saying, you are going to be like the tree doesn't fall apart from, the fruit doesn't fall apart from his trees. No. Scientifically, we can prune the old neurons and rebuild new ones. So to me, my life experience have already changed me. I don't see a color. When you bring color to you, I just think, I think I have to take you to the word thinking that person have a real mental challenges. Color, it's not a problem. Even if you are an artist, you don't need to just to make a bouquet of flower with one color. Doesn't make sense. But when you put different colors, it's so beautiful. God made us with different colors. We are a bouquet of God. And when we sit together, God say, yeah, my people. Is happy. God is an artist. But because of a little bit small group of, I call it small terrorists, they try to create something so that they can keep their own status quo by using the color, the tribal, for nose, the state, the county, the village, so that they can divide the people. But in one, if we believe in God, we believe that there is Adam and Eve. Two people. We still two. Even today, we have Adam and Eve, the husband and wife. So how do we come up with those kind of issues of tribalism or issues of color? To me, as I can answer your question, I live with Mwangi 1.5 years. They helped me. They give medication. They give me food. Am I look like a monkey? No, I'm a human being. They're not. But they have an impact even though they cannot talk to me. That's why he was just emphasized about empathy. They're so empathetic to me. They bring fire because you cannot live in the jungle without fire. There is a lot of dangerous animals. So how about us? So I believe there is higher power which always guide us so that we can reach to our purpose. We have to have a faith and a purpose. Nothing can touch us. We'll be successful. This is my divine appointment. He is my divine appointment because the way we met, no any human being can make it. I tried to find someone we can share. I told him I never share my story. Never. But I feel I can share with you because I feel comfortable. You are my brother. And then that's why I'm here. I'm not here to paint him, but I'm here to tell you for sure he's my brother.
You know, that's a great story, and I really appreciate your words. But I'm worried that, we are in a church, and that by using that story, they're going to start to doubt the divine when you're connecting me to the divine. So I'm not so sure that's such a good idea.
No, when you are calling the divine appointment, because we don't see God, but God operates through his spirit. It doesn't mean you have to be a Christian or to have to be one. God has the power to mix things if it want to happen.
Indeed.
So we can even that to justify biologically how all of those kind of happen, but we're not in the science class.
Yeah, we're in a community conversation. I want to add something to this for all of you. So what Kenny's referring to about the jungle, after he had been a refugee for a few years, the war spread and caught up to him. He'd been living in a refugee camp and he had to flee once again. And while trying to flee the oncoming rebels, he got lost. And he got lost in the jungle and lived alone in the jungle for 1.5 years before he was found by hunters. And what he's referring to is one of the ways that he learned to survive was by watching the monkeys. And so he would watch what the monkeys ate, and he would eat that. If the monkeys threw it away or spit it out, he wouldn't eat it. And that was how he survived, alone for 1.5 years.
Hi, Kenny. First, I want to thank you so much for your courage and sharing your story with us today. It's so helpful for all of us. My question, you may have already answered it, but I'm wondering, given all the trauma that you endured and everything that you went through, how is it that you find peace and perhaps even compassion for those who harmed you individually or systemically?
Praying. You have to pray God and knowing that there is a superpower which above any other human being. You can be my friend, you can be anyone, but you're going to lead to certain limitation where you get tired. But Jesus will never be tired. He will be always nearby you. He will be always showing you which kind of path you can pass through. I want to give you an example how God is very powerful. I don't have any relatives who can pay me school, but I was just to Loyola going to work in a hotel, and I just finished my associate to Truman, but I want to go to university. I want it. That's I can feel good. And I met a random woman in the bus station. I just said, "Are you an angel?" "No, I'm not." "And why you say that?" I say, "Well, I just look like you own this university, so I just want you to help me to go to school. She think like I'm crazy, you know. And that time I didn't even speak a little bit good English. Now I can. So that time, and she said, "No, are you trying to say you want to go to admission office?" I said, "Something like that." And she took me to admission office. When she reached to admission office, she said, "This is my boyfriend from Africa. He just come and he just finished college. And you know I'm a professor here. Do you think I still have a place where she can be registered under me?" It's too late. It was June. And the class is going to start in August. And they just give me, he can apply, but no promise that he can be admitted. I went to apply. Whatever I put in that paper was only my name and my address. Other things was not completed. After 3 weeks, they call me, "Oh, can you bring your transcript?" I went to Truman College. They give me transcript and they take it to Loyola. After another 2 weeks, it was August 5. And they get a letter, "Congratulations, you are admitted."
Great story.
The funny factor, since that time, I never see my girlfriend anymore. I never see her. I went to request to name me, or I never found her. So God can even use anything if it meant to be. That's how I get my bachelor in social science.
And I think Kenny deserves a lot of credit in God's intervention. If you understand the background of the story, so Kenny doesn't know much English. He's managed to get an associate's at Truman, but he has no idea how you go about getting a 4-year degree. So on his own initiative, without any help, he just shows up at Loyola University and starts walking around the campus. So, I mean, there's this incredible initiative and drive and fearlessness that puts him in this place then to run into his girlfriend.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
I'm sure your experiences in the jungle made you really strong, because if you could survive in the jungle, and you have all these strength to leave your country with no English, come to the United States, like, you know, lots of people like Amos and immigrants. I know some English, but that strength that you developed all these years helped you to meet this angel that came from somewhere. God sent it here. And she helped you, and then she disappeared because that was her job. And you could do it because of your strength and your confidence in your belief, in God and yourself, and in your own possibilities. So it's amazing. Beautiful story.
Yeah, now my responsibility as a Christian, as a part of a community, is to give back to the community. It's to give back what I know to others people. Money is good, but it's not, cannot bring joy. It can bring a little happiness and for a moment. But if you want a joy, because there is 2 ways. People don't know how to make a difference between joy and happiness. Joy, it's long lasting. Happiness, it's momental. Little, I'm happy to eat hamburger. But, you know, I'm happy to eat hamburger, but it's now, but not tomorrow. But I'm so joyful to be within you.
Thank you so much for sharing, for your service and
Thank-
your inspiration.
Thank you.
We're probably for time getting close to our last couple questions for
Well,
Kenny.
this is a good last question.
Excellent.
This is a pretty heavy evening. I would like to know, what is life? What is the strangest thing or oddest thing about your life in the city as compared to your life before Chicago? What's the strangest thing you can see here, or the oddest thing? What about us?
Well said.
First of all, anytime I meet American, I say, thank you so much. I say, why you say thank you so much? Maybe your dad, your mom, your uncle donate money to the charity who pay airplane to come here. That's the first thing they say. I had to be thankful. You had to be grateful. The difference is, you know, I'm a Django man. Django in the city, it's a difference. One, in a Django, I was alone. When I get out from Django, I don't like any human being, honestly. No way. I don't like them. Even talk to them was so difficult. I have just to be trained again to talk to people. And then when I start talking, I talk like a machine. I was lonely. The life was so difficult. I have to learn new skills. I can take you to Django. I can show you how to walk so that the cobra can eat you, you know, because it's a skills which I learned there. I can hear the voices of animals. I can tell you, this voice is very dangerous. We have to go up. Those are the Django. But when I come here, I start to see the promise which I lost from my parents. Anyone I met, I would ask a question like a baby. Every day, ask a question. And then the city, it's a lot of opportunities which I could not get. Maybe I could not get if I was in a jungle. Do you think I could get my girlfriend? No way. But here, it's a full of opportunity. People are so kind. People, they don't care if you speak English or not. They make sense to what you're talking about. Not in Europe. In Europe, if you don't speak French, they never listen to you. Third, I get opportunity to go back to school and get a degrees, you know? That's something you can compare. So here, there is abundance. Here in the jungle, or where I come from, there is problems. But both, we don't look what is bad. We look what is good. The beauty I found here has already changed who I am and who I will be tomorrow.
Okay.
Hi, Kenny. I'm Denise.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm just wondering, you spent your first 17 years in Burundi?
In my 20s.
20. Do you ever have a feeling of wanting to go back?
I went back to see where they buried my parents. To say, hello, Papa. Hello, Mama. 2 days. And I went back because the government, they're the one who tortured me. I passed through serious torture. I was eating 1 spoon of beans. So take a spoon and put in beans, whatever comes, it was my lunch. And they take the sand in the morning, and they pour on me with cold water, and they beat me to death. That's why my head, now it is America, thank you, America. Now my head is starting coming up. Before it was divided, because they would beat me a lot. So, I'm sorry. That's what I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, I'm from Venezuela, and as you know, a lot of my people are going not even close to what you are going through. And I just wanted to say thank you for your words of inspiration, because I can bring something to them. it's been difficult. My family's still back there. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing. I feel like I have words of inspiration to share from your mouth to
Thank you.
through mine.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I hope I speak for everyone. Do we have any last comments you wanted to come in? I hope I speak for everyone, but would anyone like to get a final comment in?
Yeah, you give it to, yeah.
I feel a lot of respect for you because you went through too much and you survived. You survived humans. You survived the jungle. You survived going back and all the beating you got on your head. So I feel that you did so much. You were a hero in these situations. Many people just give up and want to die and they forget about fighting. But you are a great sample of a great model for many people. It's really inspiring to hear your story. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, I think I have a last comment. Myself, I have a last comment. And I think it's just a lesson in life. In life, no matter what kind of situation you can be, you have money, you don't have food, anything you don't have it. You have to understand that God can provide at any moment. So you have to have faith. That's number one. If we have a faith, the faith without purpose will never take you anywhere. Nothing. You have to have a purpose. Why am I here? Where am I going? Those is just a simple question you can ask. You can go on and examine yourself psychologically and understand and qualify yourself. After qualifying yourself, you can qualify others. People just want to transfer the anxiety to others people, but they forget that the attitude, it's something you can change. You can control your attitude. Your attitude, that's what you have. You cannot change someone else. If you want to change someone else, change yourself. They're going to learn from you. That's their success. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. So I hope I speak for everyone, and my thank you for Kenny. Every time I talk to him, I feel more connected and certainly a lot more human. So with that, maybe it's time to listen to a little music. As we round the bend, if you will, on tonight's program, I'd like now to begin to think about how we can put all the things that we've been listening to and being touched by into action. And I think that begins with connection. While we connect with each other in our stories and our conversations, it gives us a new perspective. And to start to develop that idea, I want to share with you another story, and that's the story of Samira. Again, for those of you who are following along, Samira is also a story that you've not yet seen. This is Samira. Samira is a young woman from this area. She was living in Somalia. And when she was 2 years old, the rebel gunmen broke into her home, ran through the house, grabbed her father, dragged him out into the yard, and hung him from a tree. Her mom and her brother and her sister escaped and fled the country. They settled in a refugee camp in Kenya. This is that refugee camp. I'm sorry, I said Kenya and Uganda. They lived in a mud house with dirt floor and no running water. That mud is made of dung and dirt. And then as commonplace for refugee camps, they use what they can find in terms of leaves and branches combined with any other materials for a makeshift roof, plastic bags, tar paper, etc. And she lived that way as she grew up. Very quickly, though, her mother had to go back to Somalia to get money to survive. This came up in Kenny's conversation, but refugees, as they're refugees, they have to live, they have to eat. And so she went back to sell some property, and while she was there, she was killed. And so Samira, at the young age of 2 or 3 years old, her oldest brother was 13 or 14, and they lived together in one of those huts. They survived on her brother's work as a dishwasher at a local restaurant. They ate leftovers, and the meager earnings that he got as a dishwasher, roughly they lived on $2 a day for the entire time she was growing up. She got malaria 3 times. She said by the last time she thought she was going to die. And she lived throughout all of her time until her late teens, in which she ultimately was able to immigrate to the United States. She is now going to school. She's going to community college. She wants to get a 4-year degree, go to medical school. And then she wants to do postdoc work in child psychology, psychiatry, and she wants to specialize in childhood trauma. And I said to her, Samira, after all you've been through, living at the edge of starvation for all those years, all that illness, why do you want to work so long? You have a long path ahead of you to achieve your goal. And she looked at me with those beautiful eyes and stared at me and said, because I don't want any other child to go through what I've gone through. And in that lesson is a lesson that I hope we can build on and begin to take with us tonight. And that is this: we've got the math wrong. Whether you're on the side against refugees or your side for refugees, we often see this question as a subtraction problem. But as my math teachers used to tell me quite begrudgingly in my rather opaque head, that in order to get the right answer, you have to have the right equation. And the equation that we've been working with is an equation of subtraction. Either we have to give our sympathy and our resources to help these people, or we can't give our security and our economic opportunity to these people. Then in both scenarios, we're talking about subtraction. But that's not the equation at all. The equation is multiplication. That Samira will do things in this country that will amaze us all. And they will amaze us all precisely because of who she is and the experiences she's had that we have not. She will see child psychiatry in ways that no one else can. She will contribute to her field in ways that no one else can. She is a multiplier. Society and psychiatry and motherhood and neighborliness will all be better in whatever community she resides. It's a multiplier. Let's look at that more deeply for Ame.
My father was a political activist and one of the most wanted men in Burma. My mom left me with my grandmother when I was 3 months old. I had to keep my identity a secret because they go after the children. It was misery for me. When I got older, we learned that they were looking for me, so I went into hiding and left the country. I sometimes wonder who I am and why I didn't get to have parents like other children.
When we think about Ame and we think about this question of the multiplier, what we're thinking about is the true value of diversity. I think about her story all the time. Imagine that as when she was a young child, when she was 6 years old and she had been in hiding, she was living under an alias. And government soldiers came up to her and called her by her actual name. And here, a 6-year-old by herself. Many of us in this room have had 6-year-olds and have been 6-year-olds. Could you imagine? But she kept her cover. She didn't tell her right name. She gave her alias again. She says, no, you're, called her by her real name again. She kept her cover and kept going on. Imagine what it would be like at 6 years old to deny your very identity. But of course, what that represents for us is that those that are different than us introduce us to things we could not have imagined for ourselves. That's the value. That's the multiplier. I often use the example of parenthood in this case. When I was a bachelor and thinking about getting married, I had this notion of parenthood, which was sort of a combination of harpsichord music and Father Knows Best. Which, for most of you, I gather, know that it turns out to be quite a bit different. The expression I use now is it's more akin to being attacked by bees while driving. But in that process, of course, it has introduced me to things that I could never have imagined for myself. And that diversity is like relationship. That when we engage deeply in someone unlike us, someone other than us, we become introduced to things we couldn't have imagined. John Stuart Mill, of course, put it far better than I can when he said it was hardly possible to overrate the value of placing human beings in contact with persons dissimilar to themselves. In the modes with thought and action, unlike those, in modes of thought and action, unlike those with which they are familiar, very important. Such communication has always been one of the primary sources of progress. And this isn't just philosophy, this is science. Every experiment tells us, every study tells us over and over and over again, no matter what the context is, whether it's science or education or art, diverse groups always outperform homogeneous groups. It is a fact, it is the way it works, it is the multiplier, it is the true value of diversity. And of course, those of us now gathered together in church, we know that the number one lesson that Christ is asked to give to the questioner, he tells the story of the Good Samaritan, someone unlike everyone else, the Samaritan. And the Samaritan is the one who holds the wisdom. The Samaritan is the ideal for what Jesus is trying to teach to these people. We learn from the other. Our diversity is the means by which we reach our full human potential. It is not a subtraction, it is a multiplier, both for us as individuals and as a society. Let's see, Lang.
We found out they execute soldiers in village who helped Americans. We walk for days through the jungle. We hide and we make bamboo raft to float across Mekong River to Thailand. Everything is hard for me. My English is not good. I don't have much friends, but I get my children a better life.
I get my children a better life. Recently, Lang was visiting South Carolina and suffered a heart attack, a serious heart attack. As he laid in the hospital, his family, that he worked so hard for, put together 3 busloads of people. They all drove to see him. This is his daughter with this photo. And we have a word for that in this country. And I think it's a word worth revisiting tonight. That's this. We call that liberty. We believe that is liberty. We believe that liberty is freedom from constraints, but also openness to others. And we know why. As Learned Hand said, liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies, there's no constitution, no law, no court that can save it. No constitution, no law, no court can even do much to help it. But he says this wonderful thing: the spirit of liberty is the spirit which seeks to understand the minds of other men and women. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which weighs their interest alongside its own without bias. When we deny that, we're denying our liberty. That's the trade-off. The wall isn't walling out them. The wall is walling out us. Liberty is not just an individual right, it is also something we give to others. And this is how we celebrate that. We celebrate it with these words in this very profound way. When Emma Lazarus writes the New Colossus, she's responding to the Chinese Exclusion Act that has just been enacted the year before, when we're excluding an entire group of people because of where they're from. And she says this amazing thing. She says, keep your ancient lands, your storied pomp. Keep what we know. She says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Those words make no sense unless we understand what liberty is. To be engaged with and open to and growing from other, from people unlike ourselves. That is liberty. Liberty is not taking in the best and the brightest. Liberty is the perfect imperfection of serendipity, of opportunity, of things known and unknown that we could never have imagined for ourselves, but make us all richer in the process. The true freedom can only be found in dynamic relationship with others. When we deny that, we're denying our own liberty. That is what's at stake. This is Muhammad.
For 21 years, I lived with my family in a one-room tent in Djibouti. Very bad conditions. No running water, robberies, wild animals. My dream was to get a high school education, and I had to sneak into Ethiopia each year to go to school. It was easy to feel hopeless. But even if you can't see hope, you don't have to be hopeless.
Let's remind ourselves what these refugees are talking about when they talk about living in tents for 20 years and 20 years plus. This is it. This is what we mean by living in a tent as a refugee. Muhammad in that story, he would jump the train. So he would hang on the roof or hang on the side and sneak into Ethiopia every year to try to get an education. Sometimes he would be robbed by bandits or kicked off the train. He was injured several times, broke limbs, all trying to get into Ethiopia, trying to get an education. But what he says there at the end is that other thing, the other most important thing is about what's at stake for us when we talk about letting in liberty. And that is the issue of hope. He talks about that in such a profound way because the hope of others is what defines what's possible for all of us. When we welcome in the hope of Kenny, we're not just helping Kenny, we're also setting the possibilities for us all. That when one person is suffering and down, our potential is limited. When another has opportunity and possibility, our opportunity and possibility is extended as well. That liberty is connected to hope. Liberty is the way we get hope, and hope is the great multiplier of human connection. The thing that connects every single one of us in this room and throughout the world, no matter whether you're from Burundi or you're a Hmong from Thailand or you're from Sudan, we are all connected by hope. The common hope that defines the hope for each of us. That my hope is your hope. Your hope defines mine, and vice versa. And that is the universal equation. That is what connects us all and what makes us truly human. And as Martin Luther King says, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. And this is Muhammad.
When I was growing up and going to school, my father would say goodbye every day, not knowing if I would make it back home. At my graduation ceremony from medical school, a terrorist blew himself up. The force knocked me down. A schoolmate lost his eyes, and I wrapped my shirt around his head and held him.
When Muhammad was growing up in Mogadishu, as he points out, but is in my own research, literally, because of what was going on in the streets, his father would hug him goodbye in case he never saw him again. And this went on through grade school, and through high school, and through college, and through medical school, all the way till his last day of medical school and his graduation. Imagine, every day living in that fear, and hoping that fear would someday be gone. And on the last day, someone blows himself up in the graduation ceremony. And another young man whose father did the same thing, who said goodbye to him every day, loses his eyes. And where Muhammad is struggling and driving and working for his hope, the other person loses his own. But what he teaches me in that case is that we give each other freedom, hope, and possibility. Muhammad's first instinct is to reach out to this young man, to understand this connection, that they are in this together, and he holds him with his shirt as he bleeds both of them having lost something in the process, but both of them connected as one. That Muhammad understands that that choice of hope and the choice to give someone else hope is our choice to make. And he makes it in this very powerful and courageous way. He didn't flee the scene. He sat there with his classmate, giving him hope, connecting their hope together and connecting their life together. As Mother Teresa said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. That we are, in fact, all connected by hope. And in that hope and in that choice of hope and connection, we find each other. We have drawn you all to kind of your deepest thinking on the most difficult experiences. I hope you felt the same thing that I have felt, which is great connection and great affirmation of possibility and perseverance and what the real truth of human potential is. And so I want to end with you with a few thoughts. And that is from my experience as a young journalist covering the war in Bosnia. That when I was there, I was working as a freelance photojournalist. I arrived about as green as you can get and about as unprepared as you can get. I arrived and first thing I did is have to find a fixer. A fixer is a person that helps you with translation and getting you around the country. But as I arrived, I noticed one thing in particular, that all the journalists who were there, and many of whom were leaving because of the violence, they all had flak jackets on and I didn't have one. So I note to self that I needed to work on some things, but full of enthusiasm and interest, I persevered. And Mirko and I drove around Bosnia, and we saw very, very difficult situations. If you know the war in Bosnia, again, an ethnic conflict that broke down and almost 1 million people displaced and over 100,000 people killed and creating many refugees. And one day we were driving around and we came across a bombed out school building. It was an abandoned school building, had no windows, no running water, no electricity or heat, but it was being used as a makeshift shelter for refugees. And as we arrived, it was getting late in the evening. It was cold. It was in the 20s Fahrenheit. And as we walked inside, then people were dispersed throughout the building. There were some makeshift fires as people huddled around for warmth. There was a kettle in the front hallway to create boiling water. The gymnasium was just an open sewer of feces and urine. And mostly people sat around in the rooms with the coats on their back, huddling for warmth. And as I walked around, I saw one woman tucked inside of a classroom. And she was sitting there on the floor, rocking back and forth, holding a photograph in her hands. And as I approached closer, I could see that the corners of the photograph had been worn out as she was rubbing that photo over and over again and rocking back and forth. And I knelt down beside her with my translator, and she lifted up this photograph and showed me, and it was a young man standing on the beach in front of the Adriatic Sea with his hands on his hips and a big smile on his face. And she said that was her husband. And she then described to me what had happened to her husband some days before. They had been awoken when rebel soldiers were coming into their village, and her husband jumped up to go out and try to help the village and help the neighborhood. She begged him to stay, but he was a man of the village and he wanted to take his part in trying to help. And so off he went, and she went back in and told her 2 teenage sons to stay where they were, and she was going to go out and look for their father. So she went out looking for her father, and she couldn't find him anywhere. She came back and she found out that her 2 teenage boys had defied her and had also gone out into the village to try to help, to be men of the village. And in the course of the next couple hours, she found her husband and her 2 boys dead in the streets. And she went home and she grabbed a coat and that photograph, and she jumped on a wagon, and she said, "The last thing I saw was blood running down the streets in my village on fire." If you've heard that expression before, it has a little different meaning when you actually see someone with only the coat on their back. And so as she told me this story, she looked at me and she said, "Would you please take this photograph? In other words, would you take a photograph of this photograph so that he will not be forgotten?" And I said I would be happy to. And I set up, it was getting dark again. And so I was setting up and I was trying to get an exposure. My back was turned and I was working on how I could honor this request from this woman. And I stood up and I looked behind me, and there was a line of widows clutching photographs throughout the refugee camp. And for the next hours, I took photograph after photograph of their photos. And they would say to me, "Please tell our story so we will not be forgotten." Every one of them, we would hold hands. I would say what I could through the translator, and I'd take the next photo. And they all said the same thing. "Please tell our story so we will not be forgotten." And at that early point in my career, they taught me the lesson of my career, and in many ways, the lesson of my life. And that is, they taught me this, that we create the world we want by the stories we tell of others. And the way they taught it to me was essential, because what they taught me was their belief in that. They believed that if people only knew their story, things would be different. The great human capacity is that when we share our connection, we share both our travails and our successes, that it makes a difference, that we can trust our story to others, and that it matters. And they taught me that invaluable lesson, to go out and try to do that, but most importantly, to be witness. That what we do when we take another story is we are witness to their life, and witness to their connection, and affirmation to their connection with the rest of the world. And witness is what we all do. We don't have to have a camera or a journalistic notepad. It's what we all do in our daily life and how we live and engage the world. As Hannah Arendt said, we humanize what is going on in the world and in ourselves only by speaking of it, and in the course of speaking of it, we learn to be human. I'm not a refugee. My experience in life is fairly narrow, but I can be witness, and I can put those stories out in the world in a way that hopefully helps us become just a little more human. And so I offer that invitation to all of you to speak of it. And so we've passed out photos from the exhibition with text, and I invite you to take those out into the world and leave them. Put them on a park bench. Tack it on the refrigerator. Give it to that ornery uncle of yours and see how you can make a difference. And when we do that, and we look at the stories deeply and are informed and open and learn from the stories of A and Dissel and Sitar, then we share those and speak to people and connect to people in environments like this. Connection starts to happen. Divisions go away. Our stories are the cure. So please go out there, be witness, and change the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.